Hey, what's up? How's it going? So we're here, we're going to work on the Camaro today. I'm going to do the worst possible thing that I could ever do to this car. I can't wait to show you. So, if you look at the car the way that it's sitting, it's not too bad right now. The problem is that area. I'm going to change these tires. They look good. Even if you get up close, they don't look too bad. But when you get in there and really look, let's turn on some light. You can't really see it. They're dry rotted, okay? I'm just gonna say it. They're dry rotted in the treads. They got all kinds of meat on them, but they're hard and they've got flat spots on them. I need to change these tires and those because this thing, well, it does that more than it does that. To change these tires, I'm gonna go a little bit bigger. I'm gonna go wider. Now, I eventually want to get different rims. I kind of like these rims. I like the way they look on the car. You know, they're actually worth some money, but it won't hook up. You know, I just can't. I've got too much torque getting to the rear end. The gear is low enough that it just, if I want to go, you know, if I want to just go, it spins. And that's because these tires, well, they're round. They've got air in them. They were once made out of rubber, but it's not rubber anymore. It's hard plastic. And this car sat for 4 years while I was working on it, pretty much on these tires. Every once in a while they were off, but most of the time it was parked on these tires for 4 years. Flat spots. And then before I got it, it sat for at least 3 to 5 years on these tires, flat spots. And who knows how long it sat before it got sold to the guy that I bought it from. So I need new tires, and I want to go a little bit bigger. And if I'm going to keep these rims, I can only go, these are like 225s or I don't even know, 215s, but I can go to a 255, which is going to make them balloon out past these 7-inch rims. And the rims are 7 inches wide. Eventually, I'll get a wider rim because I would like to fill them out and get them, you know, pretty much here, not in here. And what I did when this thing was sitting, before I did this, it actually sat, you know, this end was way down and it looked like it was doing a wheelie and going up in the air. So I got in here and these are not good. These cars are notorious because if you look at this rust on the frame here, they're notorious for this. This one's really solid. Both sides are really solid on the back, which is surprising because the front is not so solid. So when the leaf spring comes in here and puts pressure up to lift the car up in the air, these used to crack all the time and they would punch through the trunk. Well, the trunk's solid, the frame's solid, so I've got some pretty good lift on this. I made these shackles myself and I ended up saving like $3 because I could have just bought them, but you know, I was bored. But that's as high as I can really lift it up. And this actually sacrifices a little bit of handling, well, quite a bit, because this actually should be here. The leaf spring is weak. The leaf spring is very weak. Well, the leaf spring is also expensive. And this is what lifts up the car. This would lift it up higher, but all it basically did was stress the spring. On the front side of the leaf spring, this is pretty much underneath the passenger floorboard. And these rot out occasionally, not nearly as often as the frame on the back, and it ends up punching through the trunk. But this occasionally will, come up through the floorboard in the passenger seat or in the back seat. So to go with a stronger leaf spring, I am putting more stress on the frame and on the body, because there's no frame here. See, this is a unibody car. So all this pressure is on just thin sheet metal that's rusted. I changed I lifted it up with the shackles. That got it up to where it was sitting pretty decent. The worst possible thing that I can do is change the shocks and put air shocks on here.
Oh wow, that's dumb.
If you look here, now you can see the rot in these tires. I need to change them. Definitely got to change. These are they're done. I shouldn't even drive this car with these on here, so I'm going to change them. It's just a straight up safety issue, and if I can get it, a little bit wider, because they're not ballooning past the rims right now, but they will, and I don't care. Look at that. I'll lose a lot of handling, but I just want to see, I want it to hook up first. So if I get a wider tire and then get a wider rim, I'll be in good shape. But I can't get a wider tire and a wider rim until I get the car up in the air a little bit higher on the back end. It's unfortunate that I have this sound in the background, but it's a week ago it was in the 70s and now it's 30 and snowing. Global greenhouse climate warming cooling change effect. Bam! I've got a couple of air shocks for the back. Not supposed to do this. Do not do this to a car like this, because back in the day, even back in the 80s, when you would put these on, they put so much stress on a car. They lifted up that back end so nice, though, man. You could just get it going like that, like Snot Rod on Cars cartoon. But they put so much stress on the shock tower where they go that they blow through and rust out. And let's face it, this car is 10 years younger than me. So this car's 47 years old. No, 46. That's how old I am. I can't remember how old I am. 46-year-old car. It's surprisingly solid underneath, but it has, like me, bad hips, bad knees, bad joints. It creaks when it wakes up and starts going in the morning. I do the same thing. I get it. I know. I understand. So we're going to be gentle, and what I'm going to do is when I put these on, I'm going to give them just enough juice to get the tire that I need underneath here. I'm not gonna crank that thing. I'm going to, but I'm not gonna drive around with it looking like that. I'm gonna drive around with it looking like that. Maybe. And so I got these air shocks, and I got one front shock because I'm stupid. But Rock Auto was nice enough to send these to me after I paid for them and paid for shipping. Yeah, they sent them right out. So this is where the air goes in. I'm not going to crawl underneath the car and shoot it in there. However, I probably could, but it'll come right out. So there's a Schrader valve in here. There's airline. There's little itty bitty O-rings. Don't lose the O-rings if you ever do this. Don't ever do this. Don't ever turn these from here to here. Leave them alone. No bueno. And I bought these. It said sold in pairs, and then I said, well, I'm doing this, I might as well do the fronts too, because who knows. And so I bought fronts. but I did not buy fronts. I only bought one because these are not sold in pairs. So if you're ordering shocks online, just make sure that you get two. I've got another one coming. I went ahead and ordered it. So a couple of days I'll be able to throw these on. I'm not going to put one new shock and keep one of the old ones because that would be weird. And I'm going to put these on, and then I'm going to see how bad I can ruin my car. So if we look in here, we can see, oh, I got to make that let go of that leaf spring, and it runs up to there. But see that hole? That's not good. That is subframe. Typically, that is back here in this back part. And that's where the spring, where that shackle is that I made and saved $3 on. It goes and pops up through the trunk, and this frame is gone and cracks. But this is all good and solid. I mean, really good and solid, except for down here. Typically, this isn't the place that it goes, and that's where the front of the leaf spring is. So my thinking is 97.283% wrong all the time. Let me help this spring and take a little pressure off of that part by putting some pressure on this part. And up in here, here's my bolts to pull the shock off. Once I get the shock off, I'm going to look in here, but this actually looks pretty solid. And typically what happens when guys would put air shocks on their cars, Camaros, Firebirds, Nova, you know, those kind of unibody car, this is rotted. We're talking back in the 80s. Now here we are a few years after the 80s, and this thing is still like a rock. That's great. Hopefully this is just as good, and I can stress it a little bit more with a shock here, lifting the car up, pushing the tires down, and take some stress off of that. So to get this shock off, I've got a couple bolts up here. 1, 2, one on each side. And down on the bottom, I've just got a threaded rod, basically. And this is about a 1/4 inch, but that fits on it better. That's a 6 millimeter. Fits on nice and tight and holds onto that bottom of that, because otherwise, and this is a 17 millimeter, which probably used to be a standard number, but when you turn it, it would turn this whole guy here, and then you can't break it loose. So you just put that guy on there, put that guy in there, and get busy. Comes right off. And now we'll take care of that with this. And you spray a little bit of the good stuff on it, and then, oh, I went the wrong way. Try this. Look at it spin. Now that I got it broke loose, I can probably hold on to it. See if I can hold on to that. Put that guy on there. Problem solved. All right, so now that that shock's off, I'm looking up in here, and that is not that horrible at all. That's nice and solid. Bolts came out easy. This is where all the pressure is going to end up being, here and here, from putting the air in it. A little bit of, it's not gone through. There's a little bit of rust here, but it's definitely, that's more solid than any car I've ever had in the 80s. So we'll see. Helpful hint. This is the old shock. Look how much wider the new one is than the old one. So when you're going to put this new one in, don't install it on the bottom first. Kind of hang it from the top, because this little guy back here is a bear to get to. I did it. It's doable. But if you put this one in on the bottom, leave it loose, then you have to lift this up and lower the axle, or raise the axle actually, to get these guys up to it. I hung this one just real loose, had the bottom one real loose, and then this one was just kind of tough to get to. It wasn't too bad. I mean, I would just, on the other side, when I do the next one, I'm not going to put this one in at all. I'm just going to hang the shock from these two bolts, because I can wiggle it around and move it, get that one started, leave them loose, and then pull down to mount this. Just a hip. Don't do the bottom one first. Do the tops and let it hang. So the other side, I actually just unscrewed the bottom here, and it came right off. I didn't have to use the grinder. And up on the top, she don't look so bad. It's got a little more rust around it. I've got some rust eater paint that I'm going to hit up in here, but I was going to do it now. I just can't find it. Whatever, you know. I'm not going to live long enough for this thing to rust out and pop through, I don't think. So, whatever. It does up on the front. See, I got the same thing going on here. It's still relatively solid in the back. It's just that pocket there, that front of that frame. Back here, we're good. So I'm going to run with it. Much easier on this side. Hang it first. Get the hardest to get bolt in first. Let it dangle there. Get the second one in. Leave them loose just so they're in there supporting it. Then you can tighten them up. The bottom seems to be the trickiest part, because you barely have enough threads here, because these rubber bushings are so thick. You just gotta man up, Nancy, and push down on this thing. Push down, and just push up on the nut and get her started. Just be careful you don't cross thread it. It wasn't that bad. Wasn't so bad at all. So now I got to tighten that up. You want to tighten this up until these bushings are just about the same distance out, so they're about even with these guys, with the washers. There you go. Easy peasy, man. I'm getting nervous because it's so easy. I'm going to tighten this one up, and then next I'm running the air hose. I'm pretty much done. Okay, now the business part. Make sure on your air hose, first thing I did was taped up the loose end that's going to be getting fed through all of this gizmo, and that way I don't pick up a bunch of junk in there. And this stuff is pretty thick. It's a very small hole for it to let air through, which I guess that's okay. That makes it's stronger. And I'm going to play the smart thing. This has got a natural bend to it from the way it was rolled up in the packaging. And when this comes down, I'm going to need to have it drop a little bit. Put this on first. Slide the O-ring on. Pull this guy off. Put that in there. That's as far as it goes. Slide this up. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not filming this so good. And then tighten it up by hand. Do not check and make sure it's not going to come out. That's it. That's on. Don't get wrenching on this thing, because you'll crush the O-ring in there, and then it won't let air through, or it'll let air out, and then it'll go. So now I'm going to start drilling holes. I'm not going to drill in the frame. I'm going to drill up. There's some really rusty stuff here. Be easy to drill in anyhow. I'm going to drill in there, and then there's a little what's it doohickey things that you snap this into, and that'll hold the line up. And I'm going to feed it on around and hide it under the license plate. So when I do feed it around, I'm going to bring it. Look at this. Oh, wow. That's not good. That's not anything important. That's just a piece of metal. Well, it used to be a piece of metal. I'm going to feed it around, probably tie it off to this wire loom, and I'm going to hang it here somewhere. This is solid. This is bumper. And then I can just kind of squirt the air up in there that way. I don't want it sticking out of the back of the bumper or anything like that, so somebody can come by and, this way it's here. I know where it's at. Shocks are on. Wheels are back on.
Where's his
She's up in
stupid
the air.
head?
You and I are in this together because I'm going to let this thing down and we're going to see.
At least he's
My thoughts are it's
hiding
going
all
to
that
sit about the
ugly.
same as where it was because the leaf springs are holding it up.
He's
Those
so
old shocks
dumb,
aren't doing much
stupid.
anyhow. I'm going to let her down. Let's see how it sits. Then I'm going to put some air in it. Okay, so the instructions say minimum 20 pounds pressure. There's 0 in it now. I'm going to put 30 in it and let's see what happens, if anything. It's probably going to leak, would be my guess. So that's 30 max. I've got the machine set to 30. I don't know if it came up. I'm sure you saw it if it did. I'm going to go ahead and set it to 60. See what happens. Let's see if we can blow these things out 10 minutes after I got them installed. So I think it's sitting up. I don't know because it's sitting in the garage. It's definitely got more clearance between that tire and that fender. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Sits overnight, see what happens when I drive it. If you're going to do something like this, be careful because that's how much line you get extra. That's it. You don't want to make them, well, at least on this car with these shocks. Like I said, Rock Auto was nice enough to send me these shocks after I bought them and paid for shipping. Here's the old ones. The old ones weren't doing anything anyhow, so it was worth a shot. Doesn't seem like there's that much pressure on the thing. I'm thinking it's going to be good. So like I said, this is the worst thing that I could have done. In the future, I don't have 20 years of driving this car left, so I don't care. Hopefully it's an easy way for me to get this thing lifted up, get some clearance for those tires.
You're so stupid.